Have you ever had a dream and been told that your dream can't happen? Have you ever had that image of who it is you want to become and have that image ripped away from you, telling you that it's not possible? Well, we're here today to tell you that your dreams are possible. And more importantly, that you can go after whatever it is you want. We are going to be talking about breaking down barriers. We are going to be talking about leveling up and taking opportunities. We're going to be talking about living your life with impact, legacy, and love. I'm Clara Capano, and stay tuned because this is Women Winning Their Way.
The NFL has done a tremendous job under the leadership of Sam Rappaport in developing pipelines for the league to intentionally create opportunities to make coaching staffs more diverse. And I
I
think
love that.
that's really
So
powerful.
good. So, just from your perspective, now that the door has been open and there are opportunities for more women and just diversity in general, what do you think are some characteristics that women in general can bring to leadership, especially in more of a male dominated field? What are some of the special things that women have that we can bring in as part of the mix?
Well, I think one of the things that's special and you know, kind of an evolution in leadership. I remember, I went to Boston College undergrad and I read, and I was in the business school and I read all of the business books and none of them highlighted empathy as a leadership trait.
Mhm.
None. And it was a very top down, disconnected, the hierarchy, like that
Yep.
pyramid of leadership. And I remember thinking, well, maybe I'm not a leader then, because that's never been me, right? Like I was a great teammate because, you know, I was good at relating to different people and leading by example and never being disconnected, but being hyper connected.
Yeah.
And, I was coaching coaches on coach athlete relationships and feedback before I ever saw coaching as a pipeline. And my philosophy has always been, players as people, right? Like no matter that they do look like superheroes. They're big pads, big helmets, big men. And underneath the pads and the helmet, they're still real life humans.
Yeah.
And I think the ability and willingness to put empathy forward, right? And put people at the forefront is not a distinctly female trait. I think it's one that often been, you know, more has more often been related to women, but
Mm.
we've also been more likely to be permitted to be human. I think there are many men who are very empathetic, but
Mhm.
never really were given that permission to lead with empathy and connection, even though they have in a lot of ways, right? But we may not have called it that. I think we're fixing that communication. But the other thing that I think is really nice in terms of looking at more diverse coaching staffs is you have different points of intersection for communication. I don't think that it's about being better as a woman or a man, but it might be, in this particular situation or
Mhm.
with this particular player, this is an easier conversation, right? There's an inherent competition, say, between two guys. They can be toe to toe, chest to chest, eye to eye. Someone like me, I could be toe to toe, but I'm never gonna be chest to chest, never gonna be eyeball to eyeball. I'm not inherently competition for you.
Right.
So I'm not trying to knock you off. There's not a machismo factor. Some of these guys didn't have men that were in the picture,
Mhm.
right? And may have been raised by very strong women. And that's a pathway that they might be able to receive
Right.
from in a different way or at a different time. And
Mhm.
so the best combination to me is one that has both the male and the female energy, right? And that allows for it might be on this conversation, I definitely am going to go to this male coach, but on this one, maybe I would be afraid he would judge me, whether or not he would. There's sometimes, you know, other conversations that are harder. And I think that we do better when we have multiple learning channels, right?
Mhm.
And multiple listening channels as well.
Absolutely. Really well said. I want to talk a little bit because you alluded to this before with leadership. How important is it for a leader to model the behavior, to walk the walk and talk the talk in building respect, following, and really leveling up to the next level?
To me, it's essential,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, there are other models of leadership that don't state that,
Correct.
right? There is an autocratic leadership that says you do it because of hierarchy, right? But that is a method that assumes you don't have choice,
Mm.
right? Like in I think in real team leadership, like and that can work, right? Like let's be honest. That can work when
Mhm.
everything's going well.
Right.
And maybe that person is the very best at what they do, scheme wise, but they don't relate human wise. And they might relate to someone else on the staff, right? So the human element might come from someone else on the staff. But that's the older school of leadership. The problem is the second things go bad, there's no relationship and consistency. So what became somebody's like spear also can become the target, right? And if all the communication is taking place at the other levels, you see those things fracture, right? Because there's not relationship necessarily. It's do what I say. Why? Because. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, well, as long as it's working, we might do what you say because but the second things break down,
Hmm.
there's not a relationship element,
Right.
right? And I am a big believer on like leadership and like great coaching or leadership comes from trust, love, and respect,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
If we have trust and love, and I used to actually, Caesar Milan taught me the respect part, believe it or not, because I assumed respect was a part of trust. And he kind of pushed back at me, and I was like, okay, I like that too, right? Because I mean, I'm not going to trust somebody I don't respect, right? Like,
True.
there's
Right.
usually that's kind of my thing. But he said respect as well. And I said, okay. And we literally laughed because we had kind of the same philosophy. But I think with trust and love, right? Like, if you trust that I'm always going to give you the best that I've got, right? Then with love, we can get through the hard times,
Hmm.
right? Because let's say I have a game plan. Man, I've watched all their tape. This is what they do. Well, they've also been watching tape and they may realize, I know this is what you do. So they're going to put in a wrinkle. Well, I gave you the best that I had, which is this is what they do. Now they're doing something else, right? But you trust that I'm not going to not tell you something that I know that's going to make you better, right? Like
Exactly.
you trust that I gave you the best that I had. And then with love and respect, we can get through it, right? Like,
Absolutely.
hey, listen, if you let me into your life, right? And we can correct this. Coach, they're doing this. All right, let's try this, right? Because we trust each other, because there's a mutual respect, and because we love each other enough to give each other the best that we've got, we can
Exactly.
fix it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if you don't have all of those elements, the second they do something else, we're fractured because you what? You lost that trust. You lost
Mhm.
the trust that what I'm telling you is going to get the job done.
Yeah.
Whereas if we have love and respect as well, right, which is mutual, then I gave you the best that I had. Now we can get better if we communicate and you know that I'm not going to judge you for that. I'm going to help you get better through it. So I
Absolutely.
think it's really everything to have that relationship, right? Like I had a player in one game and I was up in the booth, so I wasn't on the sidelines, right? Which is tough as a
Mm.
coach. I mean, I'm a sidelines gal, right? Put me on the sidelines.
Yeah.
I can fix it because I can look in a guy's eyes and know he's not there.
Mhm.
Well, he didn't have a great relationship with his dad. I knew that. If I'd have known his dad was in the front row, we'd have taken a minute, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm watching from the booth, I'm like, something's wrong, but I'm not close enough to fix it,
Right. Wow.
right? Then after the game, one of the coaches is like, oh, so and so's dad's here,
And you're like, "Ah, that's what it was." Mhm. Yeah.
right? But if you're not close enough to fix it, and I was the only one who he trusted enough to know about the relationship with his dad, right? I can fix it because we had trust and love. And I'd be
Exactly.
able to say, okay, what do we need to do? Right. And if it was me telling dad he needed to go sit 2 rows up, then
Right.
that's what I
Exactly. And that's where, it's so important to have that, because when you do give the feedback, when you give the constructive criticism, you're not coming from a place of tearing them down. You're coming from a place of, I'm doing this because you come from love and you
right.
again have that respect. So I think that's huge. When you're looking at all of these things that you've been able, to accomplish, even though things have not always been perfect, what are some of the things that you really hope people, not just women, but people in general, learn from you and learn from your story?
Well, the first thing I would say is embrace the messy, right? Because I think it's, especially in a social media world, we make it look like everything's shiny and pretty and perfect and polished. But those are the only things that are edited and put on social, right? Like
Exactly.
the the real work comes in the trenches.
Mhm.
And I think too often we also assume that people have a perfect game plan for success that was 1 to 2 to 3. And that's the only way you get it is if you follow 1 to 2 to 3. I've never had the luxury
No.
of 1 to 2 to 3. I've had the, okay, somebody's got to do that. Oh,
Mhm.
I got somebody. I don't
Mhm.
know if I can do that. What am I doing here? Right. Like, and I think it's a very human process, which I think too many times we overlook humanity that people are really experiencing. Um, I would also tell people to give themselves grace.
Yeah.
Um, especially when you're trying to do something that doesn't have a traditional path. Um, that that path that we assume is going to be there is, what they say about assumptions.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, I if I were to tell any one person all of the things that were supposed to happen in my life and didn't, if they would have heard me tell them all the things, right,
Mhm.
as they were happening that I was doing or were happening, I would look like a liar because as many big things as I've done, more big things have fallen through and
Right.
fallen through epically in ways that I looked at and I said, I I don't know what to do now.
Mhm.
And I don't know how to get up from this.
Yeah.
And also, I don't understand why I'm figuring this out on my own because it feels like somebody else should be able to tell me this. So I think we lose our way. Like, it's that saying like comparison is the thief of joy.
Right. So
And like I look at my life and this is the honest truth. I never feel like I'm doing enough. I always feel like I should be able to help more people, do more things, make more money, make more change, all of these things. I struggle with myself on a day to day basis to the extent some days it's hard to even like hard to get there and show up because people will be like, oh, you're like this invincible being. And I'm like,
I feel the
oh,
same way.
the
It
kryptonite in my
is.
pocket is real, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Wonder Woman, I lovingly say she trips herself in the lasso of truth, but like we have all tripped ourselves in the
We
lasso of
have.
truth, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I don't know what the answer is in getting better with that other than can we be a little kinder to ourselves
Exactly.
and maybe like I would never, ever, ever be as hard on any other person as I am on myself.
Absolutely.
And I think we can do better by realizing that everybody's got insecurities,
Mhm.
whether it be with what we've done, what we do, how we look, how we show up in the world. And maybe, just maybe, instead of finding criticism, we find kindness.
I love that.
Right, and I
Yeah.
I I challenge myself to, like, and you probably noticed this because we were in the same place. Like, I challenge myself to be really present with people when I get to talk to them because I don't always get to invest those minutes. So I try and make those minutes like moments, right?
Mm.
So it's not just time checking off, but like what happened in this moment to make it unique and special, and to find like a compliment and actually say it, not just think it. Like, oh my gosh, I love your dress, or oh, those glasses are fabulous, or oh, what you said moved me. Because we can go days and never get a compliment
True.
and be busting our butts and wondering, what am I doing? Like,
Mhm.
why am I trying so hard? Or why is it that in certain situations what's made me magic makes me mud in this one, right? Like,
Exactly.
where is this coming from? And I think our world is so hard, and I think especially social media makes it so judgmental
Mhm.
that if we don't actively work to be kind and intentionally find nice things, that we're letting a lot of people walk around with insecurities and sadness that don't have to be there.
I love how you said that. And it's that blessing and the curse of pushing ourselves. But you're right. We have to learn to be kinder, not just to ourselves, but to everyone. So thank you for saying that, because I think that was just perfectly said. So, Jen, I know that we are running short on time, but I have two more questions that I would love to ask as we start to close things out. So, you have accomplished a lot. And I know that your story is not even near being over. So, what's next for Jen? What are you working on now?
That's a great question. I'm working on figuring that out. Like, and I think that's a good, refreshing place to be. Um, I love football and I love communication. I am looking at maybe doing some analyst stuff. I think that would be really fun.
Mhm.
And I think as the audience of football grows, it'll be really important to have some um, you know, a say in that, right? Like in a
Mhm.
perspective, because I do look at the game from the angles of a player, the angles of a coach, and the angles of somebody with a PhD in psychology. So I think that's fun.
Mhm.
Um, I also have been pushed by some of my former players to do more in the way of, you know, really working with the athletes or teams on the player first mentality.
Yeah.
um, Football is one of the sports that doesn't yet have, in my opinion, enough of the sports psychology components. Right?
Mhm.
Some sports have really embraced it, have someone on staff who's in sports psychology, and others haven't. So I am really curious about that, and kind of looking at that. And then um, I have a kids book series that I started during COVID. So it's called Critter Fitter, and I am working on that. I've also got to write my next adult book, which I'm getting pushed to do. So I really need to get clarity on that. Play Big was really popular. Um, and yet I look at things so differently now than I did in 2017, right?
Mhm.
So, how do I extend that message and continue to reach people? And then always open to football coaching situations. I work with NFL Flag as an ambassador with the Growth of Flag, and it going to be an Olympic sport in 2028. Super excited about that. Um, I'm doing some coaching with USA Football, so the next generation of the girls who are coming up. And then obviously I have Gridiron Girls myself, where we do free football camps for girls around the country. So um, just really, I think this time has been a little bit quiet for me
Mhm.
in terms of a need for reflection, right? Like, I
Sure.
coached in the XFL last season, um, and I was the linebackers coach for the Vegas Vipers, and that team didn't make the merger. So now it's really, you know, coaching is such a an interesting business because it's not promised, and
Right.
it moves a lot, and I have to see what moves are going to be, best for me in the process.
Mm.
So um as somebody who drives a lot of things forward, I think this is also a season where I need to listen a little bit, and then, you know, run in the right direction.
Yeah, well said. Well, I know that there's just going to be so many great opportunities. And when you get your next book or anything that I can do to help promote all of your success and do what I can do, I am happy to do that because you are just amazing. And the last question I have for you is sitting where you are today, how do you define success for yourself now?
I think success at this point is legacy. Um, you know, I think the hardest lesson that I've learned in coaching is that that's only your team for a short amount of time.
Mhm.
I'm somebody who is heart forward and very empathetic, and I lean in and love hard. I'm an all in type of person.
Mhm.
So when something like ends abruptly, it takes a toll on me. The relationships can last forever, but the investment and something just being able to go away um, in a way that you couldn't predict it, like that's psychologically impactful, right? Like they say that the a career-ending or threatening injury to an athlete we take as hard as the death of a close family member. As a coach, I would venture to say that the abrupt end to any of that building process is psychologically the same.
Mhm.
And, you know, I went through, you know, I would have loved to be with the Cardinals forever, right? Like I still look at those guys and they will always have a part in my heart.
Yeah.
Then I coached in the Alliance of American Football, and the league ended after game 8.
Ugh.
Right? Like we found out on Twitter. Like I tell people, if you haven't been fired on Twitter, you haven't been fired.
So, yeah.
Because the literal like of that experience of moving somewhere, building something,
Mhm.
going all in, and then just all of a sudden being like, you have to get out tonight is so tough. You know, the Vegas Vipers didn't make the merger in the XFL and that ends. And what I realized is like I like to be a little bit more rooted than that. And I want to make sure while I invest my heart, soul, and spirit into building something that there's really time to build. And so success to me is a combination of impact, legacy, and love. Because I am an all in, love you hard person, right? Like, I love my players.
Mhm.
I love my people. I work hard. I don't understand the separation of like work and life because my life's work has been the love of my life, right? Football has been the love of my life for richer, for poorer, through sickness and in health. And at times it felt like death when we were parting, right? Like it has been the love of my life. And I want that love to contribute to a legacy where I really have an opportunity to, you know, have some roots in that. And so success to me is that and it's it's how you basically play it forward
Mhm.
for the next people. Like I one of the things I feel best of about in my life is to know that I am among the people who have worked very hard in football, who have instigated change, to which point girls can grow up with a dream of football. And that was a dream I was not permitted to have.
Yeah.
So I feel great about that part,
Good.
and am excited to see what the next part looks like.
Yeah. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being on the show. Everything that you said has so much power in it. And one of the things I really respect so much about you is how real you are. Being in a place where you are, it could be very easy for you to just ride that title out and build the ego around it. But you really are very real and raw. And that light of empathy really rings true. And I know that not only for myself, but I know everyone that's going to be watching this is going to come away from it feeling so much stronger and hopefully taking these messages of love, impact, legacy, and especially that thought of being kinder to themselves. So, Jen, thank you so much for sharing today.
You are so very welcome. It's my pleasure. And thank you for what you do in lifting people up through your efforts and voice every single day.
Thank you. Wow. So many takeaways on this talk. And so many things she talked about really just resonated so deeply with me. And just so incredibly grateful to have her on the show. Some of the things that I wrote down is, stepping up. You're going to have times where people are going to try to tear you down. You're going to have dreams, like she talked about, that your dreams are not permitted in your circle. You got to take the opportunities, because the worst thing you can do is look back and say, I wish I would have. So, again, take those chances, show up, and step up. I love what you talked about with the people around you. Who are you listening to? Do not listen to everyone. This really tied into what she talked about when it came down to trust, love, and respect. Only listen to the people who you know that you can trust, love, and respect, the ones that are there to guide you. You may not always like what they have to hear, but when you have that trust, love, and respect, you're going to know that they're sharing this stuff with you for the right reasons. So don't listen to everyone, listen to the right people. Empathy. I've talked about empathy in a couple of my other episodes, and I truly believe this is the number one skill set that we all need, is to come from that human side, to bring in that humanity piece in everything we're doing, whether it's asking another question, listening, allowing people to have their space and to give them the validation that their feelings matter and that they matter. I love what she talked about with the idea of the blessing and the curse between pushing ourselves, because it's so great when we push ourselves, but also we need to develop kindness for ourselves, because that push can really put us down a spiral. So remember, it's that dance of, yes, push yourself to go further, but also give yourself permission to love yourself and to show kindness for yourself. And then I love when she talked about what success meant to her. It's the idea of impact, legacy, and love. I just think those were so beautiful. So, for all of you, I hope you took away so many great things. Please make sure to share this, because I know there's people out there that are fighting for their dreams. I know there's people out there that are feeling like they do not matter. And I know that there's people out there that are being so hard on themselves, that these messages from Jen can really unlock them into their own greatness. So, thank you so much. Make sure to like, follow, share, leave us a rating. I'm Clara Capano. Thank you for being here for another episode of Women Winning Their Way.